Okay, so game one here is a bit of a puzzler that I am actually 100% sure I botched horribly. So we'll get to that point and we'll take a minute to see what we come up with as a way I could have easily won the game. So this is a pretty clear keep. Uh, the debate is whether we lead on Ponder or Duress. The reason we lead on Duress is to take a sphere if they have it. The reason we lead on Ponder is because if they have a Wasteland, we basically lose the game. A lesson from Legacy. So I'm going to lead on the Ponder because I'm pretty sure that Bug and all these other decks play Waste, but only Stacks plays Spheres. Plus, I don't think this hand's great against Stacks game one anyway, so I'm willing to concede that. This is a pretty clear keep. I don't really think that there's anything else to do but stack it in an appropriate way, which would be drawing the Scalding Tarn this turn so we can protect the Brainstorm. So my first mistake is coming up in a second here. So I'm going to Duress first, which is absolutely wrong, and I should fire off the Brainstorm first. 'Cause this Time Walk, I guess the Time Walk Seal thing is a combo. Come up later, by the way. But I already have a Demonic and the Seal, so I can like Brainstorm, put stuff back, fetch Duress. So that's definitely a mistake, but it's fine. I Duress. His hand is basically something that has no interaction with me, so I'm going to take this force. Bobs and Snapcasters don't really bother me at this point. He doesn't have anything to snap, like no missteps, no flusters. So I'm basically forced to pass because I don't want to just blow this brainstorm. Though I guess the logic is I can wait a turn on the. I don't have to brainstorm there, though I do have two cards I don't really want, so I probably should have. So he obviously plays the Bob, draws a card. I also didn't want to fetch last turn because I had the Vault. Next mistake, I fetch before I brainstorm. We're going to skip past my thought process there. So at this point, I do a little bit of dancing. Um, Shit, misstep. So what I should definitely not do is cast Time Walk here, which is what I'm about to do. So this is the point where I have to think. I think the correct play is actually just Mana Vault past my opponent, and then from there I would get to set up Walk Seal, and then from there I should be able to win because I can seal for Lotus, and that should easily do it. Especially like all the tutors, if you seal for Lotus, you can then tutor for uh, anything. Though I guess 1 second here. So what I should have done actually is I should have left the Grim Tutor on top. Or I'm gonna draw it anyway, so it doesn't matter because I'm passing the turn with the Vault. Um, Trying to think if there's like a specific. He probably doesn't have Duress in his deck, but I definitely that's what I should have done. Is I should have had Seal Walk to beyond the whole Brainstorm Shuffle thing to start with. I should have had Seal Walk set up in a turn, so I would be able to do that. I guess that involves passing again. No, it doesn't, because like Seal Walk, if he forces the walk, I'm fine because he's just bobbing. I guess the cards you could hit off Bob. I would resolve the Vault here, so I don't have to worry too much about misstep on my mana. So that's just like hard counters. So like if it's a Fluster Storm, that's the only real disaster. So this is my walk turn. Uh, Seal finds if this actually lets you show. Presuming I would find Lotus in this board state and pass. Opponent has revealed a misstep for our Duress. And so at this point, after that terrible, terrible decision, I'm basically in a board state where he has had, I think, 2 draw steps to hit a Force of Will. And I'm kind of just, if he has it, he has it. It doesn't get any better for me against 2 Bobs here. And I have enough mana to go for it. We'll just go through the execution here. Demonic gets Lion's Eye. This goes to get Yogg Will. This makes mana. He has the Force. I lose the game. If he didn't, it's basically elementary because I have to make 6 more mana out of my graveyard. Storm Count is literally who cares with Yogg Will because that's how that card works. And I'd be able to demonic out of my graveyard and find the tendrils. I could also seal to like ritual or like seal to something and then brainstorm into it. There's so many things that you can do at this point. It's really just up to you what you want to do. I could literally just Mind Desire from all my deck if I want to, just to showboat. But he has the Force, and there's really little left in this game of consequence. I probe, I see some stuff. He has a million cards in hand. Plays a Jace, which then sets up his Bobs, so I basically can't ever get out of this. I draw a brick. Uh, I guess I could have relied on him having absolutely no lands to put back to his Bobs with Jace, but I opted to concede. Game 2 is a pretty good example of actually how this deck is supposed to function. More so than me botching last game. We're not going to talk about that. This hand is straight up unkeepable. There's no way to get anywhere with it. Even though it's a bunch of mana and a duress, I think that all these lands are unnecessary. This hand is significantly better. It actually lets me try to cast Wheel of Fortune on turn 1. I'm kind of... I don't know why I waited for backup. I think that trying to jam at turn 1, draw 7 is actually like one of the most powerful things you can do. But I'm pretty skeptical of why I did that in retrospect. Oh well. I guess maybe because I had the Pyroblast, no other threat. My logic was that I wanted to wait for the ability to back up because I don't have anything to do if he has the Force. But I think like one of the lessons from the original long deck, all the way back when Storm Mechanic was first printed, and you could play 4 of this card in your deck because they hadn't figured it out yet, was that you won a lot of games just by going, 60% you don't have, like 60% of the time I just kill you because you don't have the Force, because it's like 40% to have one of your 4 forces and another blue card or something. So about here is where it's appropriate to go for it. As you'll see, there's now the right amount of mana in play. So 4 is the amount to cast Pyroblast with Wheel. I leave up Opal because it makes any color mana. I'm not going to crack LED here. I figure that So the current board state is basically that this Wheel of Fortune would draw me a ton of cards. And it would draw him 0. So I think that's enough of an advantage created, is a draw 5 and me up on all this mana. He Spell Pierces. I really should have Pyroblasted here, because this is going to trade for an effective hard counter basically whenever. And this Spell Pierce is basically a hard counter here. I just had like this mental block, like, oh, this isn't a hard counter, why would I trade for it? But that was not correct. I give him another turn to get somewhere. So, yeah, I Pyro his Recall in case you missed that, because if I don't Pyro his Recall, the game ends. I'm just buried under too many counterspells, presumably post-board. That was on my end step. So I draw my card. It's a Ruby, which is the one that I opt to sack to Tinker, hopefully getting a jar. He has the Force. And at this point, things are looking bad. Yep, Snap Recall. Things are looking real bad. There's really nothing else to say. Soul Ring. Jace. Activate Jace. Oh, look, we drew Yogg Will. So this is the old saying goes, you put these cards in your deck to draw them. And we LED for blue because, it's not like this game is getting any better. We should just go for it as big as possible this turn. And if we don't win, we don't win. Because he's going to Jace every turn after this, and that Jace is going to bury us in counter spells. Oh, look, he didn't have a counter. Oops. Again, at this point, it's just kind of, elementary what's going on. His new hand is a Force of Will, which we have the Graveyard Pyroblast for. It I don't know why this Mox Opal's tapped. That is definitely a mistake here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Oh, look, another probe, which lets us set up Vamp Tutor here. I did that. See, I have the jar in my hand, so it's kind of awkward there. I guess I can play the Delta for my. Oh, I guess there's only one red source, so I can't get a red source with the Delta, which was my original thought was I have a red up, so I should have not tapped the Opal at all. That was just terrible. But it's also the Ruby. I was thinking I didn't need the red because I used the wheel, but that was silly. Uh, so looking at this real fast, uh, what's going to happen is I'm just gonna go ritual, vamp, tendrils, probe into it, and then pyroblast his force, which I know he has. His hand had no other free counters, so I kind of ignored it. No missteps, nothing like that. There's definitely some tapping mistakes this turn. Force, pyro, bricks, tendrils for literally everything and more. So, again, advantage of putting powerful cards in your deck is you get to draw them. It's a pretty consistent trend amongst formats, like every single format. You put Sphinx's Revelation in your standard deck last year so you could draw it and cast it against Mono Black after you've been slinging spells. And they're like, oh, I finally resolved my last threat, and you have nothing. You're just like, actually, game ends. So, same concept here. So one of the things I actually kind of want to point out is my sideboarding in these matches that I kind of missed last game. Typically, against blue decks like this, I'm boarding out the Hercules, and I am boarding out the Windfall because the post-board games get a little more attrition-y with Pyroblast, and you're less likely to have a bunch of cards in hand. And I'm blanking on what the last card I board out is. I think it might be the Misstep usually, and I just bring in the the Pyroblast. It's like the general gist. I think it's actually usually the Chain Vapor. So, yeah, that's what it is. It's the Chain of Vapor. So I saw if you didn't get it pointed out by me, but there was a Meddling Mage exiled to his first Forcible last game. I was like, oh, I do need a way to get rid of that because, like I said in the deck portion, my only kill spell or my only way to kill him is Tendrils, and if he just names it, it's a bunch of hoops for me to jump through. So I boarded back in the Chain for this game. I'm pretty sure that is absolutely incorrect because I completely forgot Pyroblast destroys blue creatures like Meddling Mage. This keep is real simple to keep. You have Sapphire Recall, which is, you get the cast Recall here. If you draw any black source, you get to Ritual. And Necro. So our opponent does some Stoneforge nonsense. Literally the worst thing he could possibly do with this. Meddling Mage. Names 10 rolls. Guess what? I'm going to draw my deck and kill you on the turn I win. So as long as... This card is... in Legacy, it's kind of tricky... Or... Let's think about it. In Legacy, you usually are attacking their enablers, but in Vintage, it's a lot harder to do that with cards that say name a card just because of the restricted list. It's like, oh, what would you like to name? Wheel of Fortune, I've got one of those. Yawgmoth's Will, I have one of those. So something like Meddling Mage is way less effective. It's actually pretty reasonable against something like Oath, where you can just name like Oath of Druids if you hit it early, or like Doomsday, where you can hit like their 4 of card. But a lot of the Vintage decks are just like busted combo, and like even just like you're like, oh, Meddling Mage, name Time Vault, okay, wheel, discard Vault, Time Walk, tap Welder, get it back, the game ends. So I'm really not sure what that card is doing showing up in this format, honestly. So Recall resolves, which basically means the way is clear. But I just want to know, absolutely clear. Oh look, we get to Necro. I don't even bother tutoring. I'm not really sure what number I chose on Necro here. It was kind of arbitrary at the point. Sure, 7. There could have been a little more. Actually, there was quite a bit of logic here, now that I remember it. Usually my Necro numbers are not quite as well thought out, to be honest, because it doesn't matter most of the time. 8. So this puts me to 7, which then lets me probe 3 times next turn or double Grim Tutor. So that was the logic for 8. was it's the maximum amount of cards that lets me still cast my life total cards. It also lets me try a smaller redraw next turn, so it's a pretty reasonable life total, I think. Rather than let this resolve, my opponent decides to concede the game, basically. And this is about where, as you can see, I realize my chain pyroblast mistake. This hand wasn't actually very good at killing him, but he's just done. Honestly, I don't blame him given his hand of all bricks. He doesn't even have a blue card to cast the Force, and with all of this, I should be able to go off through Force. I actually was probably going to set up like a Necro Walk turn or something. Like Necro Walk. I could Necro, yeah, Necro Vamp Walk was probably the setup there. So I would be able to find probably Will, and that's good enough. Okay, so to go through the motions of how I would have killed him there, that's it. The Will would have also let me flashback, like if he draws, I guess the only card he could draw next turn that would save him is Flusterstorm. And it's very possible he doesn't have that because he is a deck that has to fight over Dark Confidants and Jaces and Umezawa's Jites or whatever people are showing up with these days.